listening to The Kula Ring, a podcast made for manufacturing marketers. Here are Carmen Perry and Jeff White.
Welcome to The Kula Ring, a podcast for manufacturing marketers brought to you by Kula Partners. My name is Jeff White, and joining me today is Carmen Perry. Carmen, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Jeff, and excited for today's conversation. I don't think we've covered this topic on the podcast at all before, which, we've been at this a while, so we don't get to say that very often.
No, it's very true, and it's interesting because, in all honesty, it's one of those things that when you hear about it and you think of the scale of organization that would benefit from it, it's like, of course. But until I knew it existed, I didn't know it existed. So joining us today is Cory Kniepp. Cory is the Director of Strategic Planning and Marketing Operations for U.S. Motors at the Nidec Motor Corporation. Welcome to the Kula Ring, Cory.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Carmen. Pleasure to be with you guys today.
Yeah, Cory, it's awesome to have you on the show, and I'm really interested to learn more about this transformation to marketing operations. But before we do that, I think we need to know a little bit more about Nidec and you and how you ended up there.
Absolutely, yeah. Nidec is a little over 50 years old. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. They're a Japanese company that started really with motors that went into like hard disk drives that went into computers. Over the years, they had a lot of mergers and acquisition activities. Back in 2010, I believe, they acquired the Emerson Motor Technologies division, which included U.S. Motors, and started their foray really into the commercial and industrial segments. The U.S. Motors brand actually goes all the way back to 1908. So they've been cranking out motors all the way back 100 and almost 20 years now. So hard to believe that a motor manufacturer's been around that long, but happy to be part of an organization that does it.
Really cool. And Cory, how long have you been there?
I joined Nidec in 2017 after a 12-year plus stint with Emerson Electric in various roles there, primarily on the sales side. Hopped over to Nidec because I was looking at some changes in my personal and professional life to get a little bit more into the marketing realm. Nidec offered that opportunity to me, and it's been a great fit ever since.
Really cool. So let's start to peel back a bit the layers of this transformation from marketing services to marketing operations. And I mean, even when you think about that, I mean, I think there'd be listeners that would be like, well, what do you mean by marketing services exactly? So let's get specific. What are the functions that we're transforming here?
Yeah, so when I got to Nidec, I really wasn't familiar with the marketing services function. One, I was new to marketing. I came from the sales side, but I was familiar with like sales operations. The team that props up the team that handles all the tools, all the reports. You need data, you go to them, they get it for you. When I got to Nidec, they had a very similar team in marketing services, and primarily they were data focused, right? They were, what's our daily run rate? What orders have we taken in? What have we shipped out? But outside of that, there wasn't really too much other value or strategic work that department was doing at the time. And part of it was the tools required to crank out a lot of those reports. It was still a lot of manual processes. You needed very specific skills to take all this data, aggregate it, and make something useful out of it. So marketers and salespeople alike could do some sort of meaningful analysis with it. So that's what marketing services was when I got to Nidec.
Which it should be recognized in and of itself as reasonably advanced from in compared to a lot of manufacturers out there that frankly don't invest that much energy into understanding data and reporting, even as what you describe as the beginning state.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and I've gone to many different industry events where you hear from peers in industry and they say, oh, I get that from Joe's spreadsheet, or I get that from, Christie's report that she publishes every day, right? There was no, it was almost a human feel for all these really important reports and tracking methods of different metrics that were coming out, and nobody was really looking at it historically as, hey, we're taking a look at all this data, we're doing stuff with it, we're putting meaningful analysis to it. It was go to that person and get that report. It wasn't go and get that data or go and do an analysis on something. So yeah, I think Nidec was a little bit on the forefront. Prior to the predecessor that I took over for, I think he saw, hey, we can do a lot more with this data than just having one individual crank out a report.
Do you think that your kind of background in sales operations and having more of this data at your fingertips, kind of as a, almost productized, internally productized data, is sort of what drove you to begin to transform from, a labor of love and manual effort to the systems you have now?
Absolutely. And just a little more on my personal story. So I came and started as a market manager here at Nidec, and I had responsibilities for like commercial and general industry OEMs. So it was kind of an extension of my sales background. But prior to me being here, I was a sales director, and I looked at our performance very analytically, right? People that work with me know that I reference the movie and book Moneyball way too much. One, I'm a huge baseball nerd, and for whatever reason, that book I just actually reread it a couple months ago, but it still speaks to me like, hey, you can keep a very complex set of data and simplify it and synthesize it and have other people understand it on new levels, new ways, new shapes. So I had that in my sales background. And when I got here, I was looking for those same type of metrics. And I found myself taking one of those, kind of customized reports, taking other data, stacking it on top, and getting my own kind of personal dashboard view of what I felt the health of my market that I was responsible for. Well, I started doing that. Other people started to take notice. My boss at the time took notice. All of a sudden, a couple of years progress, and I find myself in the marketing services realm, looking at bringing that skill set to a wider audience, right? So yeah, the sales background, absolutely, it played a big role in what I visioned our marketing services team should have been doing, and what I vision now for our marketing operations group, now that we've kind of had that transformation.
So let's dive into this Moneyball transformation then. You really have me intrigued. How I guess how long would you say the path was from the time you really started to change the function to where you're now saying we're fully up and running as a marketing operations division?
Yeah, so I think that's an ongoing journey, right? That probably never ends, especially with the new technology and tools that come out on a daily basis. I was at Gartner's marketing symposium earlier this month, and there was a presenter there that shared, I believe the website is like chiefmartech.com, and he has a map of all the marketing technology tools that are out there. I mean, you could get the biggest screen that they will physically sell you, and you could still not see all those icons and make out all these tools that we're bombarded with on a daily basis. So yeah, to go back to the Moneyball analogy, you kind of have to keep it simple, right? There's a lot at us, just much like our data. We got to take a good, simplistic approach to what's going to work for us. What tools do we use? But also avoid the trap of, hey, I only know how to use a hammer, so everything starts to look like a nail. We do need to understand the other tools at our disposal and how to best roll those out.
I want to, and if I'm putting you on the spot and you can't disclose the exact tools, I certainly understand, but I'd love to know kind of the category of technology you look to introduce and how you thought about rolling that out. I think our audience would get a lot out of understanding sort of how you were thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it in the start, right? It's utilizing our ERP data, right? Which is where all of our it's our source of truth data transactionally, right? How do we take that, use tools that, like business intelligence visualization tools. How do we take those types of tools and create reports that are a little bit more maybe friendly to look at? I know, that I'm an engineer by trade. I might not seem it, but I have that. I can look at numbers and it means something to me, right? But I've worked with enough people in my career that I know numbers don't speak to everyone, right? You need that visualization to fill that gap and translate that message that somebody that sees numbers clearly can then speak at the same language to somebody who maybe doesn't quite have that same appreciation for just looking at raw data and numbers. So that was kind of trip number one through this journey. And then it's looking at, okay, customer relationship management. What type of tools can we use that data and now give our sales team and marketing team a little bit more intelligence about the health of markets, about customers, and then aggregating that with other third-party data that might be available, right? Are we targeting the right types of accounts? Are we targeting the right types of customers? Do we have the right product mix to go after and target certain customers? So I'm only looking up because I have a huge map on my board of all of the buckets that we kind of play in. I mean, even communication technologies on the operations side, we want to make sure that our marketing team has full understanding of all the communication tools that we have. What are the best practices on email, on messaging, Slack, Teams, whatever it might be. How do they use WebEx versus Teams versus Zoom versus everything else? We want everybody to have that type of appreciation. How do we best share files? What files can be shared versus not? What type of content is in those files, and what type of content speaks to the audience that you're speaking with at the time? What's the most impactful? So there's a lot of technology circling around all these day-to-day marketing functions that we just want to make sure that we use it as effectively and efficiently as possible.
I mean, I'm imagining that you're really your act of bringing this level of discipline and rigor to the function is shining a light on new sources of information, new connections, new patterns that perhaps the organization wasn't aware of before. I'm curious, would you say has been the biggest aha moment that you've had in this?
I think it was bridging that communication gap, right? And I even go back to my days as a sales director, and we were looking to hire somebody, and people around me said, "Hey, you have to place this head in this particular market. Like this is the geographic area that we need somebody." And I looked at our data of who our customer base was, what our targets were. I looked at that and I said, that doesn't make sense, right? Like, okay, I get it. There might be one or two kind of significant targets that might be in that geographic area, but you're blinded by that, right? There's a bucket of other opportunity in this other region. We can place that person here and it will make sense. Well, having that discussion, people come in with their opinion. Hey, it needs to be this. I had a little bit more data driven opinion. How do I get that data to do the talking for me? Became my first big aha moment, and that's where I was using a visualization tool to do some heat mapping and say, hey, look, right? This zone of the country is underserved by our current footprint. If we put somebody there, there's a lot of opportunity that person can work on, and that worked. It was my first, I get what I can do with this. As we've evolved from that data driven services only type function to this operations function, it's the same thing with business practices, right? I urge all the marketing team here to come to us and say, okay, what are the repeatable tasks that you do? What are the hurdles that you have in your day-to-day professional life that are slowing you down from doing the job that you're here to do, which is marketing? And we take a look at those processes and say, hey, how do we set you up for success to where they're not getting in the way of your day-to-day core function, right? We want to make sure that we're clearing the deck for them. We're utilizing all that technology that we're already paying for in the best possible manner to make their lives easier, so they can keep their eye on the ball there and go out and market to our current customer base and potential customer base.
What area of the marketing function do you think needs to be more data-driven than it is today?
For industrials, all of it. Think about your B2C interactions, right? And we all get this. I could open my phone up and look at my Gmail inbox and see all these personalized messages of companies that I've had interactions with, like either I just bought shoes from, or I bought a shirt, or we just had to buy a new washer and dryer. So I'm getting the, hey, get ready for your washer and dryer delivery. Do you have this? Do you have that? What about buying this type of cleaning agent to make sure that your washer stays fresh? Like you're already getting those messages before you've actually had the product delivered to you, because they know you're in this stage of, hey, I'm prepping for the new appliances to be delivered. You have this very, like, the term I've heard is hyper personalization, right, of the messages you're getting hit with from these traditionally B2C companies. In the industrial realm, we don't do that very well, right? There's companies that claim to do it and have a good account-based marketing approach, and we're going to take a look at an industrial customer the same way we look at a consumer of B2C type consumer goods. But at the end of the day, no, it's still much a different just a different ecosphere that we need to think about. How do we take some of the best practices that we like from our consumer lives and adopt them in this industrial realm?
But your point is taken that this isn't new. As you talk about it from a consumer perspective, it's not like you're looking into the crystal ball about what's around the corner. You're like, no, this has been around for years, guys. So what's standing in the way of industrials? Do you think they just don't care about it as much?
Oh, I have a lot of theories here. Right. I think, for industrials, everybody's doing less with, or doing more with less, right? Hopefully not doing less with more. We're doing a lot more with less. I look at, even the prior organization I came from, like the more that gets dumped on some of my previous colleagues' plate, that they're continuing to handle more and more different products, different markets, different segments. And they're not getting any more bandwidth, right? So for us to continue to do that effectively, we're going to have to look at all these other types of technology that helps make that kind of that personal connection with our customer base. I think we're to me, I feel like we're really at a tipping point too, and I definitely feel it in the environment that I'm in currently, that we're looking around the office, and we're seeing that, hey, there's a new generation that's already in the workforce here, that they're looking for this type of work. They expect this to be from the people that we do business with, and they would expect us to act like this to the people that we sell to as well. So I think we're just lagging behind, maybe a decade behind B2C type companies and consumer type goods type companies. But I feel like we're there. We're ready to start that transition. I think this, the growth of marketing operations is a function over the last 5 to 10 years across industries, and we're included obviously in that as we've made our change. It's having a lot of new eyeballs on this problem, saying, hey, wait a minute, we can take these best practices from B2C and apply it here.
Part of the challenge too for industrials is that the switching costs for customers are higher. It's not quite the same as a B2C environment in many cases, where you can buy X t-shirt versus Y t-shirt. So it makes it a little more difficult, I think, for the decision-making apparatus to be able to visualize or imagine the true benefit of doing that. So as somebody who's in the visualizing benefits business, I think you probably have an answer to it.
Well, I think there's this concept from, if I remember back to my marketing research class, it's the first mover advantage, right? It is you the first one to the game with that type of plan that's executed well is going to see the benefit from it. But to your point, what the questions are always going to be, what's the ROI on this project? How do we get this? And we have to find different ways to tell that story up front to get the buy-in, right? We're going to be looking at a new set of metrics, and I think that's one thing where we still don't have that same, the clicks, the conversion rates on clicks and everything that, these B2C companies track, because it's important to them, because there are so many options for a consumer to go out, like you said, a B C D E F G t-shirt options, right, and so on down the line. We don't have that as much in traditional industrials, but we have to start thinking about what are the metrics then that do point to a likely conversion of that person that goes to our website and then becomes a sale, or that person that interacts with us at a trade show and then becomes, eventually a sale. Traditionally, at least the industrials I've worked for, we have not looked at those metrics, and that's something that we now have to start to think about, because it's not a simple spend the money on this tool, recoup the money by year two. It's completely different new set of math and skills that we need to communicate then to our colleagues in finance and the executives that are signing the checks.
I wonder if you can paint a bit of a picture, because where you've operationalized these things that were previously typically marketing only kind of data, and perhaps traversing over to sales as well, of course. But have you found that other individuals beyond the more typical departments are now looking at this and asking for access to this, or benefiting from it in some way?
Yes, yeah. I mean, within our group, I speak with people from the engineering side all the time about, hey, what's the data? How do we do it? How do we look at processes even? Some of those conversations have come up because we do have a track record of showing improvement of different productivity and process improvements within our own department. So yeah, I think it's taken note. We've talked with quality department over data. We've talked sales and marketing. I mean, we're linked at the hip there. So literally everything we do, I think they're well aware of and ask a lot of questions for. That's always been there. But yeah, lately I think even finance has taken some more kind of intrigue and interest in, okay, tell me about this. What does this mean? How are you looking at it? Because once again, they want everything to be a simple calculation that they can show. And with many of the tools that we have, as much as I'd love to keep it all super simple, sometimes it's just very difficult to do that. So we have to sit down and have those discussions.
It's kind of strange. A couple of seconds after having the conversation about how B2B industrial is 10 years behind B2C, now we're going to look into the future and ask you what's coming next. So we're on a leapfrog and imagine that we've already caught up to the B2C folks or something. But I do wonder, I mean, I can't imagine somebody in your function isn't at least somewhat obsessed with what AI is going to mean to the ream of marketing operations functions that you manage. And I know it's the question du jour. So I apologize in advance for asking it. But I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't to say, where's your head at with it right now? How are you thinking about it?
I think if some of my colleagues were taking bets on this, they'd be surprised that it took about 20 some odd minutes before I mentioned AI. Yeah, thanks for the prompt there. But yes, I mean, it's everywhere. At first the approach was, okay, what is this? Does it make sense? How do we use it? How do we use it safely? We've done some internal reviews and studies. We've worked with our IT department a little bit on that as well, about, hey, how do we put the right safeguards up? What level of customization do we really need here? Do we need to partner with somebody in a specific area? And what does that partnership look like, that we're keeping our data safe? But yeah, Gen AI is in every Gen AI specifically is in every aspect of the marketing function. Then you go to the data side, and I hear the term AI thrown around all the time, but this is really just machine learning to me, right? And that concept's been around for decades. It's just now we have higher computing powers that machines can train quicker and quicker and come up with their algorithms much more effectively than what they were doing even a decade ago, which is sometimes hard to envision and hard to imagine. But yeah, we're looking at every piece of our function, from our business data management to our analytics and reporting, to our business process management that we do. And how do we responsibly use AI to essentially become part of our team in those separate functions, right? It's no longer just a tool. It's literally somebody that we're going to look to as kind of our first line of defense. We'll have experts vet anything that comes out of there, and then go from there. But yeah, it's becoming prevalent in everywhere I look.
I almost was going to ask you if you think there's a chance that it could be possibly overhyped at this stage, but I feel like that's silly to even ask because you seem like you're full in.
I think the overhype for me was probably a year ago. At first it was everything, right? Oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. That put all of our documents in there, translate everything. We'll put all this in there. Do that. See where we should be selling our next motor, right? And then all of a sudden you realize that there was these, I think the technical terms hallucinations. There was, kind of questionable results that came out of it. If someone was training the model in a way that was counterintuitive to the way it had already been trained, then you really had a conflict of what was getting out of it. And I think now that's kind of subsided. Everybody's backed off a little bit. I would say throughout the last half of at least calendar year 23, it felt like not as many people were talking AI as there were in the first half of 23. I think part of that was that drop down to that hype cycle, people coming back to earth and resetting expectations. And now what we're seeing is a lot of customized tools that include artificial intelligence as part of the tool, right? You want to go out and do some research. Well, here's a research tool, and with it is an AI module that's included where you can ask the AI bot questions. It will help get to a potential solution quicker than doing just the research alone and prompting it with, typical search functions. You've got, obviously a lot of data where you can ask data plain English, and it will start to create the answer for you versus doing the analysis and trying to calculate a number. Yeah, it feels like it's everywhere. And then the CRM packages too that are, taking all the interactions that are tracked and putting AI spin on it, trying to predict what the next response should be, right, to a customer. That's something that we're seeing. I think the better success in AI is with those individualized kind of secure tools that are, you've drawn a certain perimeter around them. It's only going to train on this particular data. It's going to sit in this particular environment, and that's it. Versus that original, hey, check out this website that everybody can go and type stuff into. And yeah, today it will answer 5 + 3 is 8, but tomorrow it's going to answer 5 + 3 is a rubber chicken or something. It goes from sensical to nonsensical because you have bad actors playing with it that all of a sudden break a model, right? So it was never that bad of a hallucination, but I think you get the point.
Those inputs, though, I mean, the quality of data that things get trained on and the model of how it gets accessed is everything, and it's why the public AI tools are just so fundamentally broken, because they're training on the literal web, which is full of disinformation.
Oh, absolutely, right. And I'm part of a engineering society here, International Society Automation. I've been invited twice to present on the use of AI in our industry, and I co-present. I take more of the business operations side, and another gentleman takes more of the engineering and design side. And I mean, from one presentation to the next, I mean, we had about a 2-month time lapse in there. The first time he said, "Hey, we're going to calculate this, run of pipe for some sort of engineering project," right? Puts all of his parameters in, it calculates it, and he says, "Hey, that's within what we'd expect," and it shows all the work and everything. And he runs that same experiment about 2 months later and gets a wildly different result. And yeah, he was just using free tools to kind of show what AI could potentially do. But if you're unaware of that, right? I think of all these college age individuals that are being encouraged now. Hey, experiment with AI, because this is where the future is going to go. They're getting wild results out of there, right? And if they're relying too much on it, you're going to throw all those years and years of engineering and business expertise out the window because you've relied too much on an automated result. So we do have to be careful about that going forward, that we don't have a skill degradation of I forgot how to design that length of pipe, but I know AI can do it for me, right? I think there was that same fear generations ago going to like a calculator to do a lot of calculations, right? And I definitely had to show a lot of work on a lot of engineering exams in school, but thank goodness my calculator was there to check my work, because I'm sure I would have missed a few things along the way. But yeah, if we lose that core fundamental building blocks of all these functions, engineering, marketing, sales, operations, we're going to be in trouble if we rely fully on the machines to do the work for us.
Cory, I feel like we almost need to stop now, or else we're going to spend another hour on AI. Your coworkers send me a few texts here just in the last little bit. They've warned me. So
they know I'm passionate. Yeah. When used responsibly, it is a great thing. But boy, you still have to really have a head about you to make sure that it's not garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been my pleasure, guys. I'm looking forward to hearing the product here, and hopefully we've entertained a few folks along the way.
For sure. And I'd love to check in 12 months or so and see where you're at then.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Cory.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to The Kula Ring with Carmen Perry and Jeff White. Don't miss a single manufacturing marketing insight. Subscribe now at kulapartners.com/The Kula Ring. That's KULApartners.com/The Kula Ring.